Emotional overwhelm shows us that work-life balance is an illusion. As nice sounding as it may be, the fundamental split between work and life shows us that our work hasn't come alive and our life doesn't work. That's really what's going on in emotional overwhelm. But we can resolve those two problems of a work that doesn't feel alive and a life that doesn't work. We can resolve these things by developing our emotional mastery. That way, you don't have to be subject to overwhelm and loneliness and exhaustion in the work that God has called you to do. So that's what we're going to take a look at in this video, how you can get through emotional overwhelm to become better able to perform at the work you are called to do and more emotionally present for the people who are really counting on you. Now, let's start by taking a look at the root cause of this phenomenon. And what we're really looking at here, when we find ourselves emotionally overwhelmed, when our work hasn't come alive, when our life just doesn't seem to be working, what we are dealing with is repression. Emotional repression keeps us from developing our emotional mastery. Go figure, if we repress and tuck away and bury our emotions, we never actually have the space to be with them and develop competence and mastery. We never learn how to harness them toward the goals we have for ourselves. Now, this makes sense, right? I mean, we come into every situation, whether it's our work, whether it's our home life, we come into that situation already a socialized being. We're already a socialized person entering into every new circumstance. And that means we bring with us the habits of our socialization. These are developed way back in our personal lives. The core habits of how we navigate stress, how we navigate interpersonal difficulties, the core beliefs we have about who we are, the way the world is, how reliable other people are. These things develop by about 18 months of age. They get codified in what's called your attachment style. I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on that. You may have some familiarity with the general concept already, but suffice to say, for the time being, your habits of dealing with emotional stressors, they are deeply encoded within your psyche. And again, repression is one of the core ways that we deal with this because in our early developmental environment, we we had big feelings, right? If you've ever been around a kid, you know that kids have big feelings. And nothing creates more of a challenge for a parent than their kids' big feelings. If you've got kids of your own, you can relate. Boy, big outbursts of anger, big outbursts of excitement and joy, uncontrollable, unconsolable sadness and wailing, especially when you're out in public, right? It's like you're looking around, everyone's looking at you, you're trying to keep this under control. So you can relate, right? In early life, if you had these big feelings and you didn't have exceptionally sensitive and responsive and attuned caregiving, the implicit message, let alone what may have been explicitly said to you, the implicit message is there is not space to feel this. You cannot feel this because if you do, your security is in jeopardy. I mean, just think, as a child, your survival depends on maintaining good relationships with your caregivers. And if your big feelings threaten that connection, if they get mad at you or scold you or hit you, punish you, abuse you, yell at you, or just withhold love from you when you're feeling this way, I mean, you learn implicitly, unconsciously, it's not safe to feel this. So these habits of repression develop throughout our lives. And we then come to find that there is a very circumscribed way of being that is allowed. I mean, the repression, especially when it comes to our emotions in our businesses, it basically says you can't be what you are. You have to do this and this and this in order to be safe, in order to be worthy, in order to be okay. Now, the, the hard thing is we can all probably resonate with that to a certain degree. If we're business owners, we do understand that we have to do certain things in order to receive value from the marketplace, right? I mean, it kind of makes sense, but it can become a bit distorted and a bit overly generalized because we are not merely business owners. We are persons in the world. We are romantic partners. We are in caregiver, parental roles. We are community members, members of the congregation. We are any number of other roles beyond just business owner. But for those of us in business, business owner swells as a role, and we may think there's no space to feel what we feel here. That just leaves us in this blurry, vaguely defined stress kind of state. I'm stressed. I'm overwhelmed. The affect theorist, Sylvan Tompkins, said that stress is best understood as blocked up affect. Affect is the biological basis of our emotional experience. And he's basically describing repression. When we repress something that we genuinely feel in response to circumstances, we bottle it up, we bury it, and stress, vaguely defined, is what we get. I mean, when we bottle up our emotions, we are actually cutting off access to our biological resources. These are the God-given resources we have to deal with the task at hand. Our emotional experience, it does three things. It gives us information about what matters. It gives us information about what way that matters. And it gives us information about to what degree it matters. As an example, if you are feeling excited, that lets you know that something matters. I mean, the thing you're excited about, it matters to you. It shows you in what way it matters. Excitement signals that you are approaching something desirable, right? And it tells you what degree it matters. If you are just like through the roof, over the moon excited, or you're just like, I got some stoke for this. You can see in what way, well, you can see what matters, in what way, and to what degree. Compare that with anger, let's say. Anger lets you know that something matters. It tells you in what way it matters by saying that, boy, this thing is being threatened or compromised, jeopardized in a way. And again, it tells you to what degree that thing matters. Are you angry that someone cut you off in traffic, or are you angry that your spouse was unfaithful to you, right? So our emotional experience provides us both information with respect to our deepest values, and it also, when we are not defended against emotional experience, it also gives us energy that we can harness toward the achievement of our goals, toward the fulfillment of what matters. So, therefore, I submit to you that undoing this repressive mechanism is going to give you both more information and more energy to accomplish the goals that matter to you. So, let's take a look at how we can go about doing this. Uh, One of the clearest sources of emotional overwhelm in business owners in particular, it occurs when we find role conflict. Now, I hinted at this a little bit earlier. You occupy the role of a business owner, yes, or service provider, whatever the case is. You also occupy the role of person out and about in the world. You may occupy the role of husband or wife, spouse role. You may occupy the role of parent, caregiver. Each of these roles has different goals associated with it. And when we are unclear about our roles and our goals, or we blur the boundary between these things, we get overwhelmed quite easily. Uh, so if I'm unaware that I've shifted context and I've left the context of home, where I may be a parent, I may be a spouse, I may be a person, and I've entered the context of my workplace, that different context means that I have shifted roles as well. And if I am carrying residue, uh, unresolved business from one role into another, I am less capable of performing the work of that role. The opposite transition obviously applies as well, right? If you've got client headaches, that kind of thing, unresolved business here, and you take that across the boundary into another role, you cross context boundaries from work to home, and you carry that unresolved stuff into your role of spouse or role of parent, you're going to be snappy, irritable, or emotionally checked out, unavailable, dissociated, whatever the case is, right? So it's very important for us that we establish the psychological boundaries of our context, and the boundaries include time and space. So right now, for example, I am in the role of business owner, service provider, content creator. And they blur together a little bit there, but I am in a work context right now. Now, I'll say there are some personal circumstances that contribute to a sense of, "Ah, there's something else to manage here." So I went through the process that I'm going to teach you uh, just before making this video. It actually helped me work through the outline of this in a much more effective way. So I have to recognize that I have crossed a boundary into a particular context that has an appropriate role and appropriate goals. So consider for yourself, if you are overwhelmed in your business, you're in the role of business owner. And no doubt there are certain stressors, either within this context or outside of this context. But for the time being, there are stressors that are making it difficult for you to accomplish the task at hand. Yeah. So here's how we're going to approach this. If you have a piece of paper handy, go ahead, get a piece of paper, get something to write with. What I'd like you to do, or doesn't matter what I'd like, what I encourage you to do is start with the facts of the situation. So, whatever this stressful, overwhelming situation may be, write the facts of the situation. This is who, what, where, when. We're not going to get into why, we're not going to get into how really, but just the facts. To the extent that you're able, set aside the kind of framing thoughts you may have, the interpretations. Well, he betrayed me. Well, okay. What happened that you are calling a betrayal? She kicked me while I was down. Okay, that's an interpretation. What happened that you are interpreting as kicking you while you're down? Just the facts, bare bones. I mean, it may seem a little robotic, actually, a little stripped out that way, but as best you can, write out the facts of the situation. And again, writing this will make a difference. It's okay, actually, to think through it, but it's more effective to write this out. It gives you literal distance from this. Now, when you have written out the facts of the situation, here's the question that's going to help us orient to the boundary here and help you focus on the task. How do you feel about the facts of the situation? Now, feelings, we're generally looking for one word and kind of an emotional word. Uh, do you feel happy about this? Probably not. Most of us aren't overwhelmed when we're happy about circumstances. Do you feel sad about this? Do you feel angry about this? What we're not looking to do is confuse our thoughts and our feelings. For example, I feel like I'm never gonna get out of this. That's a thought. That is not a feeling. And actually, that's an anxiety-provoking thought about the future. You'll notice that thoughts often cross a time boundary. The thought, I'm never gonna get out of this. A, it's not a feeling. B, it takes you into the future and it gets you anxious about some potential outcome. So we're going to set aside the thoughts. How do you feel about the fact that you're in the circumstances that you're in? Maybe you feel frustrated. Maybe you feel angry. Maybe you feel sad. Uh, if you feel overwhelmed or you feel stressed, I'm going to encourage you to treat those as kind of interpretative. Uh, Overwhelmed in what way? Stressed in what way? We're looking to get a sense of what is the emotional experience here. It may be difficult to access, but again, how do you feel about the facts of these circumstances? You may be frustrated, sad, angry. Again, when you can identify the feeling, see if you can connect with the physical experience of the feeling. Clear a little space within yourself to fill up with the feeling as best you can. Let it be as big as it is. Now, it may help to center yourself by establishing awareness of the supporting surface underneath of you. So you could direct your attention downward to the chair, to the floor, and you can notice, boy, I don't have to hold this on my own. We're going to see more and more that you are thinking that you have to hold a lot more on your own than you do. You're never quite so alone as you may think you are. You've got way more resources available, which we'll get to in a moment. So clear a little space for this feeling. If you notice that there's tension coming in, see if you can just gradually unravel that straitjacket of tension. Tense is not a feeling. Tense is what we do as part of the repressive mechanism to constrict our feelings. And when we do that, we're really constricting access to our vital life force, the energy and information available to solve the problems of our lives. So do away with this tension the best you can. Again, there are facts of the circumstances, and you feel something about the facts. When you can get under the tension, when you can separate the thoughts from the feeling itself, and especially the thoughts about the feeling. It's not okay to feel that. I'm a grown up. It's not appropriate. On and on and on. Just set the thoughts aside. You can always go back to thinking that if you really want to, but the thoughts are making you miserable, so why would you want to think that? Label the feeling and find some sense of the physical experience of it. This will develop your neurological capacity. It will begin to integrate the bottom and top parts of your brain, as well as the left and right hemispheres of your brain. This integration process depends on noticing and observing your bodily response to this emotion. So we're looking to get a sense. Is there warmth? Is there energy? Is there a sense of movement? Is there an impulse in a way? These are going to be the signals that let you know you've found the embodied emotional experience. Tension is not that. That's constricting the flow of energy through you. So when you can label the feeling and when you can make a little space for it, this is where the process gets really, really good. You're going to bring this feeling into relationship. And I will encourage you to do so in a very specific way. For the task at hand, consider this. For the work that you're attempting to do, who is this inspired by? And who is this in service to? So we're going to get a sense of the roots of this work and the people who will enjoy the fruits of this work. So when I was going through this, for example, a few folks came to mind, inspired by, well, first and foremost, Jesus Christ. I mean, I take no greater inspiration. Uh, I also noticed, oh, well, this is inspired by a particular theorist whose work I derive my work from, Ivan Hegazarian. This is inspired by a mentor of mine, a man named Peter. This is in service to, well, you, kind of in general, maybe I don't know you, but this is inspired by a particular client of mine, or pardon, this is in service to a particular client of mine. This is in service to my beloved. Uh, so I have a sense of who this is inspired by and who this is in service to. And I'm going to encourage you to imagine that you're seated at a round table with these figures. So I just have on my left-hand side the people I'm inspired by. Jesus is right there at the center of the table. The people it's in service to are over here. And if you can imagine that you're seated at a table with these people, if you bring your feeling into relationship with these people, what do you notice when you imagine making eye contact? If you look around the table at these people that your work is inspired by and in service to, if you bring your feeling into relationship with each of them, do they know something about this feeling? Could they relate to what this feeling is like in their own way? Could they resonate with you and help you hold more of this feeling? I don't know. I can't predict the future, but what I imagine is that when you do this, you're going to have a much clearer sense that you are not alone in this experience. That resonating with these others in this way is going to help you remember that this work isn't something you're doing on your own. You're not so lonely. You're not so over your head in this. You actually have this relational capital you can pull from, these resources of these relationships. And it's really only available when we can connect with our own experience first. Because we can't relate with other people until we can relate with ourselves. But when we can relate to our own experience, when we can undo the repression, connect with our own embodied emotional sense, then we can bring that into relationship with these other people. And we can find that our relationships deepen. And as they do so, we unlock more capabilities. We develop ourselves for the work that we're here to do. So rather than burying the emotions, pretending they're not there, just having another coffee, another cigarette, another coffee, another cigarette, and just head down, focusing on this and going through this frantic, dissociative kind of approach to our work, we can pause, we can acknowledge the truth of our experience. We can not just hold it on our own. You've been holding so much on your own for so long. It's killing you. I mean, my heart breaks for this. You can bring your embodied emotional experience into relationship with these imaginal others. They're not merely imaginary. This isn't pretend. Surely you have a sense of their presence here when you bring your feeling into it. And after you've done so, just check back in. What changes for you when you can bring the feelings into relationship with these other people who inspire your work and to whom your work is in service? Does that make a difference regarding the overwhelm that was there before? Almost certainly yes, but again, I can't predict the future. I don't know for sure. Um, where am I in my outline here? Here's the thing. You are always more capable than you know, and you are never as alone as you may think. Satan would love for you to forget that. Satan would love for you to think of yourself as limited, incapable, unable to do this, and alone in the experience. That's what's really driving so much of this overwhelm. But when we can lift the repression and connect with our embodied emotional experience, we have an option available to us that wasn't before. We can be in wholehearted participation in our relationships. The only other option is the lonely, overwhelming isolation of hell. So, at the risk of raising the stakes in an overly dramatic way, you are at a fork in the road. One option leads to wholehearted communion with the salient figures in your life, the people who inspire you, the people you're in service to. You can bring your heart into your work, and your work will come alive, and you'll find that your life begins to work. You can take that fork at the road, or you can carry on pretending you don't feel what you feel. You can carry on with the overwhelm. You can carry on with the loneliness, the exhaustion, the isolation. Uh, my hope is you're equipped now to make the right choice. I'll suggest that there is a right choice, although you are free to choose either of these paths. One of these, it turns you toward God's design for your life. God lets us know that it's not good that man should be alone. We're only alone when we're disconnected from our emotional experience in that way. But when we can bring that experience, when we can connect with our feelings and do so in resonant relationship with people by whom we're inspired, into in service to whom, I lost the phrase, embarrassing. Anyway, when we can bring our heart into our work and do so in resonance in this way, emotional overwhelm, it just goes out the window. We're there. We are as we are. We are held in communion with others, and we discover more of our God-given abilities. My hope is that this helps you do the work you're here to do so in a better way, and that makes you better for people outside of your role as business owner. When you do this, I think you're going to find it changes the way that you show up in your role as business owner. It also changes the way you show up in your role as parent. It changes the way you show up in your role as spouse. It changes the way you show up in your role as friend, child, community member, member of the congregation. You're better when you bring more of yourself to the task at hand. And you're better when you remember that you're not alone in this. So, if these ideas that I've shared in this video, if these resonate with you, uh, and you'd like to take this practice further, I'm going to put a link in the description down below. The link will just be to a form to signal your interest. It'll have a couple of questions about who you are, what you'd like to accomplish, what you feel like the limiting factors are. I'm collecting interest in new work groups for this. So if you would like to increase your performance, if you would like to deepen your presence at home, just fill out the interest form down below. And I mean, it's not like you're making a formal commitment by filling out the interest form. It just lets me know whether I'm on the right track with this, if this is of interest to people, and how I can be of greater service in the future. So if you have found value in this video and you are interested in seeing what more could be done with this kind of practice, again, just click, I think it's going to be down below the video. You'll see there's a link to a Google form. It'll be, I think, 5 questions is what it has in there. So anyway, I hope this is a blessing to you. I look forward to speaking with you in the next video.